joining me today and to have this conversation. It's a pleasure to have you feature. So to start things off, maybe if you would like to just introduce yourself in your own words, a little bit about yourself and your journey to where you are now in business.
Sure, no problem. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this. It really is, it's an honor. Yeah, so thank you firstly. So yeah, my name is Tamlyn Nel. So I studied to be a chartered accountant. So I did my studies at Stellenbosch University. Thereafter, I did my articles at KPMG. So it was quite a corporate environment. You get thrown in the deep end a little bit, which is great. It was what I wanted. I wanted to experience the proper corporate life. I kind of always thought that that's where I'd be heading. And yeah, so while I was there, I realized that the whole typical chartered accountant route is actually not for me. Like, it's for a lot of people, and I have so much respect for people who continue on in that, because it can be quite high pressure situations. But just for myself, I realized, you know, it's not what's ticking all my boxes. Nothing, like I said, against the company or anything. It was just actually the route wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So, you know, it's a 3-year contract, so, you know, within 3 years, you know, you kind of have to figure out what's next. And I'm someone who's a planner. So like at university, I made sure that I knew that I was going to KPMG like in my first year. So I had like 7 years planned out, and then the 7 years was kind of coming to an end. And I was like, okay, I don't really have a plan for going forward, and I don't actually know where I want to go. So it's not like I'm looking at specific jobs or that kind of thing. So that was actually a little bit overwhelming in a sense, to not know, especially as a planner, where I'm going, what I want to be doing. So I kind of just started applying for all jobs, any job, like obviously still within my field, not something like random, but just to kind of figure out, you know, I also had to take the pressure off myself, to put that plan aside and realize the next job doesn't have to be the job for 20 years. You know, you can figure it out as you go. So yeah, so then I started applying for jobs. I knew kind of what I didn't want to do. So I knew I didn't want to be in auditing. I knew I didn't really want to be in the tax space. Something with a little bit more people interaction, consulting maybe, but not, you know, like with the pressure of managing people's money. So there was a lot of, yeah, I had a long list of what I didn't want to do and kind of nothing of what I knew what I wanted to do. Yeah, so then I ended up applying for a job at a investment property company, actually in the accounting division. I thought, oh, you know, let's just see what comes of this. And yeah, so in the interview, the CEO was sitting there, and like 5 minutes in, he like just gets up and walks out. I'm like, well, like, that's not great. Like, this is not going well. So I'm just sitting there with the HR. She's like, oh no, he does that. I'm like, again, not very reassuring, but thanks. So anyway, so he comes back and he brings with him some other man that I was then introduced to. He's the general manager of the wealth management division. And the CEO was like, yeah, within 5 minutes, he knew that accounting wasn't quite where my passion was, but he thinks I would really fit in that division. So yeah, after the interview, I realized that was actually more aligned to what I want to do. So the role kind of entailed like speaking to people, chatting to them about their property portfolio, helping them plan for retirement. And I was like, okay, no, that is actually more my direction. So I was very grateful that the CEO was able to see that and kind of jump at the opportunity. So yeah, so that's how I kind of got into that space, more, you know, consulting, chatting to people. Yeah, and then stuff kind of flowed from there. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Would you like to, but can I just carry on?
Carry on. No, I'm loving hearing your story all about you.
Okay, well then I'm going to carry on. Sorry. Yeah, so then I started working there, which was great. I learned so much. It wasn't specifically accounting, but it was still finances, but talking to people, and I felt like I was actually making a difference. And in that, I realized that there's such a need for financial education. Coming from a financial background, having studied it and all that kind of thing, there's just certain things that you just assume other people know. And And I realized that that's not the case. Like, when are we ever taught how to budget? You know, unless you go study something in finance, or you know, are just more naturally numbers inclined, those kinds of things don't come naturally. Yeah, so there's just then this expectation, I think, that you need to know how to work with money, but no one's ever taught you. So that's when I realized that there's a real need from the basics, like how to work with budgeting. What does your credit score mean? You know, what is this debt cycle people speak of? Some people say there's good debt. What is that? Why is it good? What makes it bad? Like, you know, like really like from the basics, but then all the way through. And I realized that it wasn't just a specific group of people that lacked the knowledge. It was across the board. You know, it was people who were buying their first property because they finally were earning enough to buy one, and then there were doctors who were buying 5 because they were in that position, but yet there was still fundamentals that was not in place for, like I said, across the board. And that's kind of when my desire started to awaken. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but to help people, to give people hope again when they look at their finances. I think so many people, you start talking about money and they want to just crawl into a hole because they're like, I can't deal, it's too much, I'm feeling so overwhelmed. Like, I don't even know where to start. It's just, you know, this constant like dark cloud over their head. So I really wanted to give people hope again in their finances. So this idea started forming, and then life happened. So yeah, I was actually diagnosed with leukemia. So I was at the stage, I was 21 weeks pregnant. I went for like one of those big checkups, the scans and stuff didn't quite look like they expected. So yeah, after blood tests and stuff, they realized I had, it's acute lymphoblastic leukemia, to be precise, but basically it's a very aggressive kind of leukemia. It's more common in children, so when adults get it, it's a bit like problem. I mean, it's a problem always, but you know, even more so with adults because it's so aggressive. Yeah, so then a couple of tough decisions had to be made. We had to say goodbye to our baby girl, and I had to start treatment immediately. But I'm here, so you know, it's a wonderful journey. Well, it wasn't, but it is. Like, the ending is really great. So yeah, then I kind of went into 6 months of treatment. Like, it was hectic. With leukemia, you actually stay in hospital for like weeks on end because you know, the treatment completely kills your immune system. So you're in one hospital room that's sealed, you're not allowed out. So it was it's quite a journey, and that was on and off for 3-4 months of that, you know, intense treatment. And then I ended up having a stem cell transplant. So it's basically a bone marrow transplant, but less invasive for both the donor and the recipient. And that was a success. And 3 months after my transplant, I was then clean and, you know, in remission, which was, it's kind of still mind-blowing to me that, you know, that journey was happening. And then I was like, okay, I'm ready to get back into work, you know, like there was this I'd been sitting still, I mean, not really, but for 6 months, and I was just ready to kind of jump back in. But in that time, this desire to help people had like escalated exponentially. You know, I realized life is short and I just don't want to be sitting on the sidelines seeing people suffering and not doing anything about it. And what I have to give is the knowledge on finances. So I might not be in a space where I can, you know, start a huge charitable organization or even have a desire to do that. But what I can do is follow what my desire is, and help people in that space. So that's kind of, then I'm like, okay, no, this is something I want to pursue. Like, I've realized that life is so short. So if there's something that you feel you need to do, you should do it. Like, and especially in the phase that I was in. So I spoke to where I was working, and I was like, is this something that we can incorporate here? You know, what's kind of the idea? And they weren't against the idea. I might say they were open to it. They were, you know, very keen to hear my ideas and stuff like that. But after, I would say, a month or two of nothing really getting off the ground, you know, I realized that this was maybe something that I had to do on my own, which was like super overwhelming to me. Like I always say to my husband, I'm like, he's like an entrepreneur. So I'm like, you go do your own business, like I'll support you 100%. But I like the fixed salary. I like my knowing when my leave days are. Like that works for me. That ticks my boxes. Like this whole running your own business, hoping for the best, like that, it's not my personality. But yeah, like after realizing that I have this passion to help people, that I'm not going to be able to do it where I'm at, I started weighing up options and speaking to some people. And that's when I actually started chatting to my brother-in-law, who is an incredible businessman. And he had his own company, I think it's 12 years now, so he's a lawyer. But he likes to see opportunities to grow his business in different spaces. So he was then also thinking of, financial education, financial coaching. He also saw a need for it. And our visions kind of really aligned in what we wanted to do and our heart for business going forward. So that's kind of when I took the leap of faith, and I partnered with him, opened up a new division within his company, focusing specifically on financial coaching and financial education. So, and that's where I'm now. So that was 6 months ago. So that was kind of the journey to get to here.
What an amazing story you have. And like I said, this podcast is all about hearing the stories from leading and inspiring women, and I think that goes beyond just business and business success. It's also about your all-round character, your life experiences that made you to the strong leading woman that you are today. So you have quite the story to tell, and I'm sure there was a lot of lessons along the way. I know it's a new journey that you started on in the last 6 months, but maybe you can touch on some of the lessons that you learned.
So I think from the beginning, like I just realized, like even with my articles, like it's okay to not know where you're going. Like it's okay to not have your career planned out for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Like that was how I started my career, and I realized that it's okay to not be like that. It's okay to kind of go with the flow. I think especially, I don't want to say our generation, but the younger generation, we don't just start a job at 20 and stay there until we retire. Our parents and grandparents, that's kind of their mindset. But I think we're a lot more open to opportunities, which is great. I think that's a good thing. I think it's a positive thing. We're open to growing and exploring new things and putting ourselves out there. Why not? If something doesn't work, let's try something else. Let's figure it out until we finding our passion. And if that changes in the next 5 years, change again. There's no rule to say you have to stick with the same thing for as long as you need to. So I think that's one lesson that I learned, is that you don't have to commit to something forever. Another one is, I think not putting too much pressure on yourself. For me, I'm very much a perfectionist, and I expect high standard for everything, and I think I expect it even more so from myself. So, to just be okay with learning. If you fail, it's an opportunity to learn. You figure it out as you go. And then obviously a huge one for me is that life is short and unexpected things can happen at literally any moment. Like the morning I was fine, by the afternoon my life was turned upside down and inside out. So if you have a passion for something, don't delay. I mean, obviously don't be reckless. But if you can pursue it, even if it is as a bit of a side hustle in the beginning and see how it goes, by all means do it. That's life is short, and your happiness is that's actually something that is within your control. So there's a lot of things that are not in your control, and that as a control freak I needed to learn to let go. But your happiness and what you're doing in life, that is within your control. And if you can organize your life or around things that's really going to fulfill you and make you happy, do it, please. And you don't explain yourself to anybody. That's also another thing. You think, oh my God, what people are going to think. It doesn't matter. Focus on yourself. I mean, without being a selfish person, but if you are content and happy, you're most likely going to spread that around to the people around you. Whereas if you're unhappy and discontent, you're kind of taking that negative energy wherever you go. So then people are thinking, okay, so she's stuck out her job, but she's so unhappy. What's she actually gaining? So yeah.
And I can definitely agree. I think a lot of the times people put their passion or their happiness in the back seat, and it is so important for us to take a step back and maybe reassess what our criteria of success is, or like the measures of success, because I don't think for some people, like, happiness is the top one, or maybe even their top three of what successful looks like, which is actually so important. And I actually read a quote this week that says a Mercedes isn't a symbol of success if you're driving it to the job that you hate, if you understand this, which I think really reigns true for the comments that you've made. And I think taking a leap of faith to pursue what makes you happy, or your passion, like you spoke on, can often be very daunting, to say the least. But it does pay off in the long run, whether that is business success or your own happiness. But as with life, it's never, ever a straight line from like point A to B. There's obviously a lot of like highs and lows along the way. I'm sure you can agree with that. So what would you say your biggest accomplishment was? And then maybe a failure, but that taught you something.
Yeah, so I think, okay, in life, my biggest accomplishment was probably beating cancer. Not just, yeah, I got over it, but I think I really tried to maintain a positive attitude throughout. You know, I really try to see it as, okay, what can I get from this? What can I learn from this? How can I use this to fuel me going forward? You know, they often say your mind is such a powerful thing, and I think until you've really been in a situation where your thoughts have had to kind of help you physically overcome something in a sense, you actually realize your mindset is, it's crazy what a big role it plays. Like, there was a day or two, I can clearly remember when I was sitting in hospital and my mind was just not, like, I was over it, I was done and whatever. And immediately my body felt that, you know, and I started to like started to physically feel bad and those kinds of things. And I was like, whoa, that's actually, it's crazy. It's just because I let my mind drift to a space where it shouldn't have gone. So, you know, to be able to pull that back. So yeah, so sorry, I think that's one of my biggest accomplishments, is, you know, being able to overcome that. And then taking the leap of faith and starting my own business. That's a huge thing for me. It was something, like I said, and I was always like absolutely dead set against it. Like when I told people I was going to do that, they were like, are you sure? You always said no. And I was like, no, I think it's time, you know. So I think that's really, you know, to actually take that step and to follow my passion and to pursue what I want to do, and leave that security behind, in a sense. And like you say, weigh up, you know, what's actually going to make me happy, the paycheck at the end of the month, or doing something that's going to be fulfilling. Yeah, and then in terms of failure, I started my business last year, July, and I got one client in the first 6 months. So I think I had to then take a step back and admit that the model I was following and what I thought would work isn't working. It's not to say it's not going to work, but if I can say that South Africa isn't ready for it yet. You can see it starting like in America and a little bit in Europe, but the South African market isn't ready for it. So I can't jump in and pursue it if I'm not going to get anything in response. You know, that's just, so I had to then admit, okay, great idea, wrong timing, how are we going to adjust and, you know, realign, because this is something that is still needed, but your approach needs to be different. So yeah, I think in a way that was a failure, and it's difficult to admit when you're wrong, especially when you think, oh no, this is great, it's going to work out. You're so excited, you're like, no, it's going to work, and then it doesn't. And you're like, okay, for how long do you continue pursuing it until you admit, okay, you know what, it's not working, that's okay, it's a lesson. Yeah, so I think that's kind of, yeah, the failure at the moment.
Yeah, and then with that success and also that learning curve that you've had in navigating life and your career, and now as a business owner, I'm sure you have advice for other women in your industry that you could share on.
I think a big thing for women is confidence. And you start to doubt your abilities. You think, okay, you like psych yourself up, and then you have one conversation with someone who might not understand you, and all of a sudden you think, okay, no, I can't do this. What was I thinking? I'm not in a good space. Like, I can't run a business. You start doubting even your knowledge, like things that you studied that you were like convinced, okay, I know this, I'm confident in it. You start doubting that. So I think my advice is just be confident in who you are. The knowledge that you have, it's sufficient. You can learn as you go, and you don't have to have all the boxes ticked before you start. And it's also okay to admit, I don't know this, and then go find out, and then come back to someone and be like, okay, I figured it out. These are the answers. Whereas I think you think, I have to know everything before I start. I have to see the whole plan before I jump in. And it's, as long as you know the first 2 or 3 steps, you'll figure it out as you go. Once you get to step 2, you'll see the next ones, and so on. So yeah, that's one of the things, is be confident in who you are. And then I touched on this earlier, you don't have to explain yourself to everybody. Like, as long as, if you're married, then your partner and you should be in agreement. Like, that's one thing that I think is, creates a happy household. But outside of that, outside of your people, you don't have to explain it to everybody. You don't have to explain why you're doing certain things. Or you can explain it, but you don't have to get the approval for it. So I think that's another thing, is that, we want to make sure, okay, everybody understands what I'm doing, everybody's on board. It's not everybody's always going to be on board, unfortunately. That is life, but that doesn't mean it's not the right thing to be doing for yourself. And then work-life balance, whatever that looks like for you. If your work-life balance is working 12 hours, but and whatever, then that's fine. But just make sure that you have set your boundaries, and that no one's telling you what your boundaries should be. Like, no one's telling you, oh, this is what you should be doing. This is how your work-life balance should look. It's a personal thing, because someone with children and someone without, their work-life balance is completely different just there. You could be working at the same company, be there for the same amount of time, be in the same role, and it looks different for you because you have other responsibilities. So yeah, I think just finding that balance between working hard and pursuing a career, whatever it is that you want to do, but also just enjoying your life, enjoying that space that you're in. And if you love your job, then do that for long. That's great. Then invest all your time in that. Like, if that's where the space that you're in, then that's fine. But also be sensitive to your seasons and to how you're feeling about things. So you might be working 12 hours a day for a year, and then realize, actually it's not making me happy anymore. I need to readjust, and that's fine. So if you're readjusting as you go, make sure that your balance is still balancing.
Which is very sound advice. That's the recipe for success. So just to move on to the greater scheme of things, where do you see business in South Africa going in future?
So I'm very proudly South African. I love this country. I'm an optimistic when we speak about South Africa. So, like, I'm not blind to its faults. But I'm born and bred here. I love it. It's my home. So I think I'm not going to touch on the negative stuff. Like I said, I'm the optimistic person. So I think with COVID, there's a lot of people that have actually started their own businesses. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that have kind of stepped up and realized, hey, this is what I want to do. They've started side hustles, things like that. So yeah, I'm excited to see more people pursuing what they want to do. I think South Africans we're quite entrepreneurial nation. So it's exciting for me to see different people stepping into that role. I think in terms of women, because we are, I'm excited for it. I think, like, the company where I'm working at now, we've got 6 divisions and 5 of them are run by females, which is incredible for me. Like, that's not even like a percentage. That's majority, like significant majority is run by females, and it's divisions that are doing well. It's divisions that are like new kind of in the industry, but you know, we each got our own way of doing things, and we're gaining respect in that, you know, and it's nice to be in a space where there's women supporting women. I mean, I know we say that a lot, but there's also women who are not supporting women, you know, where there is that comparison and that, okay, if I tear her down, it'll make me look better. I mean, I think it's moving more towards the women supporting women, which I'm extremely excited about, but to actually see that play out in business, and to see the effect that it has, you know, to be able to come into a space, and it's okay if you're having a bad day and you're emotional, because that, I mean, we've got each other. So let's, okay, great, you have a problem, we're going to sit together, we're going to figure it out, we're going to move on. So yeah, so I'm excited, and I think again, like I touched on COVID with that thing, but I think COVID has also shown us that there's actually space for flexibility. You know, you don't have to be at the office 8 to 5 to be able to do your job properly. Which I think is exciting, because I think there's opportunities now for women to be able to step into more demanding roles, but not be working a normal 8 to 5 job. You know, they can still do the job properly and do it, you know, to a level, but they can then choose, okay, I'm going to shove that into a 8 to 2 job, then I'm going to spend time at home, and then I'll work an hour in the evening, because there's now that understanding that, you know, we have to be able to balance life. So, you know, I think I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited to see women stepping up. Like this, you know, if you're following a few things, you see, oh, this is a woman-owned company, or hey, this woman's actually gone on her own now and she started this incredible movement. Or so it's really exciting for me to see women in business have gained confidence in South Africa, in my opinion. You know, we're not so afraid to stand back. You know, we're stepping forward and actually putting our hands up to do things, which is amazing. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on empowering women and female entrepreneurs? Let's focus on that.
So, okay, so like my business was started with my heart is for women. So like I said, the idea was kind of started at my previous company. And it was actually one specific woman that came in. It was a turning point for me. So she was, I would say she was about mid-50s, and she was working in Dubai at the time, because she had gone through a divorce a few years before that, and her husband had left her with nothing. So she was then forced to move to Dubai to try work and get money, and, you know, be able to save up for retirement so that she could come back to South Africa and retire here with her kids and her grandkids. And it kind of like shocked me to my core, because she said she didn't expect the divorce at all, and she had made no provisions for herself, you know, during that time, because she didn't think she needed to. You know, her husband was like, no, don't worry. He was an accountant, so he was like, I've got the finances, you know, all that kinds of things. And then it kind of left her high and dry, and I was like, that's not okay. Women should never be in a position where they need to move countries to be able to provide for themselves, because they don't have any kind of support or any knowledge or anything like that. And I didn't blame her. You know, it's a real need. I feel like across the world, but, you know, obviously my heart is here in South Africa. So yeah, that's kind of where it started, where I'm like, I need to educate women on this. You know, finance is not a male-dominated thing. It's not something that only, you know, if you're married, husband, it's not a one-man thing. It's a partnership. You should be equally knowledgeable of what's happening in your finances, and you should have equal provisions, if I can say it like that, investments, retirement things, you know, whatever it is, you need to be protected as well. You need to have assets in your own name. And women, yeah, we don't think like, no, we don't, that's not right, but there's a lot of women that don't think that they need to do that. They, you know, they trust your husband and need that, and that's 100%. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but there should be certain things where, you know, this is my money. If something happens, I'm okay. You shouldn't go through life having to worry about that. So yeah, my heart is, I wouldn't say only for women, but I think there are a lot of men out there who would actually not be open at the moment to getting advice from a woman, where I think if I can speak women to women, you know, my heart is in there. So we are more emotional than men in general. So when we talk about money, it's with the idea of, okay, but I need to look after my kids, or I need to make sure my parents are okay, or, you know, this friend, or, you know, we're not just the self-centered me when it comes to even finances. So to be able to speak to a woman on, you know, to her heart and what's important to her, and empower her in her financial situation, not that she takes over or, you know, causes issues between, you know, in her marriage or whatever, but just that she feels empowered enough to be able to know if something had to happen to her husband, or, you know, if he passes away, she's okay. You know, she has an understanding of what's going on. So finances is then, in a crisis in life, not something that adds stress, but it's, you know, we can put it aside because I've ticked that box. I understand what's happening and I know what to do going forward. So yeah, just in terms of women in general, and then also for women entrepreneurs, you know, like if you are great at baking or designing or making clothes, whatever it is that you're great at, I want to be able to take the admin burden off you, the financial burden off, you know, like I feel like that shouldn't, you know, if you want to start a business, be like, okay, I really want to do this, but I actually don't have the energy or the capacity to deal with all the admin things and all the financial things, so I'm rather not going to do it. Like that would break my heart if that's the reason you're not pursuing your passions, is because the admin is too much or the financial side is too much. So that's where, like, I'd love to come alongside women and be able to put processes in place for them so that they can do what they want to do. They can make their fudge or make their clothes or whatever it is that makes them happy, and take that burden off them, and then watch them run with their business and, you know, take it to whatever heights, or even if they want to keep it small and just run, like, okay, then you don't need all these other things that some other business brokers might tell you need to put in place. You know, let's get rid of that. We'll refine it. This is your heart. This is your vision, you know, go with that. So yeah, that's kind of where I would like to support and offer, yeah, to serve women in that space.
And that's amazing advice to give on encouraging women to be confident and independent in their own right, and then also a great business model that you've now established. So would you like to possibly speak on something you're like most passionate about, which speaks to what you're doing with your work?
Yeah, so it's empowering people. That's something that's so close to my heart. It's to bring hope into kind of hopeless situations. And it's not just for a small group of people. Like, as much as I've spoken that I have a heart for women, it's for people from all walks of life. I'm actually speaking to an organization now called MESS. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they work with homeless people. Like literally people that they're taking off the street and trying to upskill, and I'm wanting to offer training to them. Like, when they earn their 100 Rand a month, what do you do with it? How can you make it work for you? How can you make, you know, so it's empowering, like I said, everyone. It's not just for the people who already have money and want to know which investments should I go into. By all means, I'll happily help you with that as well. But it's my heart is for everybody. I want to create a safe space where people can come and feel, you know, it's a judgment-free zone, as I call it. You know, come show me all your debt and let's work through it, or whatever it is. So yeah, to empower people, to give them hope. I'm really passionate about that. And I want people, after they've had a conversation with me, to leave feeling like they can breathe. Like, okay, I can do this, you know, feeling, okay, I can stand up a little bit taller, it's going to be okay. Like, so yeah, even after one conversation, that's really my heart. Yeah.
And then, just to end things off on a fun note, I just have a final question, a bonus question, if you would like to say. If you could be an expert in any field, what would you be and why?
This is an interesting one. I'm going to go something that's very left field. I would say food, cooking, spices, like anything. Like, if I could have that knowledge of like a professional chef, that would be great. Yeah, like I said, it's very left field, very random, but yeah, that's kind of something that on the side, that's my creative space, is food. So yeah, if I could be an expert in how to do mixed flavors, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's a bit different to what you're used to. Yeah. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation I've had with you. I've loved to chat with you and get to know all about you and exactly what you're doing. It's incredible, the space that you're in at the moment. And I really feel like you have a heart for people. It's not just about a job at the end of the day, which is really inspiring to see. And your business model is empowering people, specifically women, which is incredible. So I have to take off my hat to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been so fun to talk to you. Yeah, so thank you. It's been really great.